So I can't believe I was so excited about this month and talking about extraordinary love and these various ways that I wanted to explore it. And it was awesome to have Trudy talk about a self-love story. And she was so bright and so light, and just this beautiful message that was so inspiring that was delivered about really loving the self and what that means. And then Gail last week was amazing. This beautiful, beautiful talk and offering that she shared about true love, or trust love, trust love was the talk, and what that really means. And so that was just beautiful. So I want to thank Trudy for an amazing talk and Gail for an amazing talk. I got such great feedback for both of those. Thank you. Yes, let's give them a big round of applause. And I encourage you, if you did not hear those talks, or if you want to hear them again, they're on the YouTube channel, and it's just the talk. So you can always go back and just listen to the talk. And then if we're Facebook friends, you know I release reels with excerpts from all the talks. So you get to hear it again and again. So here we are at the end of our month, and we are talking about love thy neighbor. Love thy neighbor, which can feel a little difficult right now, right? One of the reasons I wanted to talk about love this month is because I think that we get confused, and especially in New Thought, I think it's easy to think about love in terms of like this sentimental, airy-fairy, holding hands, singing kumbaya, rainbows and unicorns, and that's a part of it, but that is not all love. There's other elements about love, right? And so I wanted to really explore that in this season where we look out into the world and there is there's just like this data dumping, purging of news that's happening, right? So if you're following the news, there's all these horrific things that are coming up in the news and things being revealed, and it's just a lot. It's a lot that's swirling around, and whether you are reading these information and engaging with it or not, there's still this collective energetic that's churned up and stirred up by so much of what is happening around us, right? We can't always buffer ourselves from that energetic that's happening collectively. And so the beautiful thing is we get to come here into this space, into this container, to get filled up and fed up with the truth, so that we have a little bit of spiritual armor as we navigate through these crazy times that we're in. So, as we look out into the world and all that is happening, there's the beautiful thing I read, monks, the walk for peace, right? And so they completed their walk for peace, and there's some beautiful images of the monks with their dog, and it's just really, really beautiful. The movement that swept the country as we followed, right? As a reminder of love, as a reminder of humanity, a reminder of dignity, of oneness, yes. And we balance that with all of the other stuff. There's rumors of war, there's threats, there's all these things that are happening. And right now, I think the most courageous act that we love neighbor. I think it is a courageous act to love thy neighbor. And I'm going to talk more about what I mean by that, because it's easy to love thy neighbor who's like us, right? It's easy to love thy neighbor who looks like us, who thinks like us, who prays like us, who lives like us. And it's harder to love thy neighbor when none of those things are true, or that neighbor seems very, very different in some way, right? Marilee, am I having a mic problem? Okay, what am I doing?
I'm not sure. Where's your cat located?
Right here on the.
Okay, you should be okay, but I'll let you know if we
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I love Marilee. She's like very gently letting me know, wait, that they can't hear you online. So, beloveds online, we are getting it together. So sorry about that. So here's the thing, when you think about Scripture, you think about the commandments, and in Matthew it mentions the greatest commandment, right? The greatest commandment is to love God with all thy heart and all thy mind and all thy soul, right? To love God. And the second one is to love thy neighbor as thyself, right? To love thy neighbor as thyself. And what's so interesting about those two commandments and how they're companioned is, it's really easier to love something that's abstract, right? So the first commandment is about loving God. In traditional religion, God is a person, typically a man, who's up somewhere in the sky, who is meting out justice or whatever punishment, love, grace, right? But it's sort of an abstract concept. In New Thought, we don't believe that. We know God as consciousness, as divine intelligence, as love, as peace, right? But it is a consciousness, not a person. But it's still abstract. Right? And if what we know in New Thought is that God is all there is, we believe in an omnipotent God. We believe in an omniscient God. God knows all things. God is all things. God expresses as all things. God is all powerful. God is everywhere present. That is the foundation of our belief. And that God is expressing in, through, and as each of us. And so there's this principle of oneness that is sewn into the fabric of our teaching. And if that is true, then loving thy neighbor is actually loving God, right? If there's only one thing here, if there's only God expressing in a multitude of ways, God expressing in distinct ways, then if we're loving our neighbor, if God is expressing as all things and as all people, then loving thy neighbor is loving God. But it can be a hard concept because the divine expresses in unique ways through and as each of us. And what that can look like in these human bodies is there are these, all these people who are different than me in some way. So it becomes easier then to think or to feel or to sense separation. It's like, oh, yeah, my people in my tribe are cool, but, those people over there, I don't know, maybe they're not even people. Right? It's this othering that begins to happen when we lose that connection, that thread, that through line, that there's only one thing expressing. It is God, it is good, it is powerful, it's expressing through everything. Right? But once it gets differentiated, once it gets pushed out, then it becomes easier to point at something and say, or point at someone, and they are now an other. Yeah, are y'all following me? Yes? And so the invitation that we have is how do we return to that place and state of oneness? And let me be very clear about what I am talking about here. I am not, when I talk about love thy neighbor and loving thy neighbor as thyself, I am not talking about not having boundaries or not holding one accountable, right? So love, I think when we talk about love, that the foundational piece of love is respect, right? There has to be respect. There has to be this sense of seeing someone's dignity and humanity, even if you don't agree with them, right? Seeing that someone is inherently worthy because they're an expression of the one, even if I don't like what you're doing. Right, so respect is the foundation for love. It used to really irritate me and it still does, when people say, practice tolerance. Yeah, tolerance is not going to get us anywhere, right? Because that just means if I'm tolerating you, it's like I can be disrespectful and be tolerant, right? Respect is a different thing. It's saying I don't agree with anything you're doing or what you're about, and there's inherent worth there. There's inherent humanity there, even if I can't see it. Right? Respect is a different thing. And when you are respecting another, when you have respect, a respecter of persons, then from that respect empathy is able to flow. Right? I may not agree with you, but I understand how you feel. Right? I may not agree with the way you're behaving or the actions you're taking, but I understand that you're terrified. Right? I understand that you think you're losing something. I understand whatever it is, even though I don't agree with how it's playing out. Right? Empathy comes from that, from respect. Compassion comes from respect. Being able to know there is God expressing through this individual. They are inherently worthy, right? And I can then lend my heart, lend my hands, lend my resources to that individual, not from a place of I'm better than and I'm helping these poor people, but from a place of, oh, this is God expressing, and I'm supporting that. Right? True compassion comes from respect. Now, here's some other elements about love that we don't tend to think about, but I think are so important. And they're really important when we talk about loving our neighbor. Because so often we think of the compassion, right? Kindness comes from respect. This kindness, not nice, because that's performative, and I don't like that word, but kindness, like truly being kind, which is rooted in the word kin, right? My family. Right, human family, and finding ways to be kind. But here's some counterintuitive things about love, about loving thy neighbor. So one way you love your neighbor is you have got to have good boundaries. You've got to have great boundaries, right? You know that saying, great fences make great neighbors, right? Why? Because it becomes very clear what's my property line, what's your property line. Right? We don't have to fight about it. We don't have to fuss about it. We don't have to get into it about it. We don't have to have an attitude. It's clear. This line, this is the line that you either I invite you to cross or you don't cross. Right? So boundaries is a component of love, because if you just love, and there's no boundaries, you become an enabler. Right? And when we look in our world at the things that are happening right now, the things that are coming up right now, it's so important to understand boundaries, right? Individual boundaries, being able to have a boundary for yourself. Who can be in your life? Who can have access to your body? Who can have access to your resources? Who cannot? Right? These are important things, and you can be loving and boundaried. And in fact, being well boundaried is a way of loving yourself and loving others. I say this all the time in my corporate life and here. Things that are highly valued in our world are highly boundaried. You cannot just walk up to the crown jewels and touch them. You just can't walk up to something that's very valued in our world and have access to it. There are boundaries around the things we value. And yet we can walk through our lives and our relationships and we don't want to put up boundaries and wonder, why am I being treated like this? Right? Why am I not being honored and respected and valued? Yeah, so boundaries is an important aspect of loving thy neighbor. Another one that flows from having great boundaries is accountability. Right? Accountability. And being able to hold thy neighbor accountable and holding ourselves accountable. And again, I've been in this teaching my whole life, so I've just, I've grown through these things myself, and I've seen the dissonance that can sometimes be happening in our communities around accountability and boundaries and holding people accountable. It's not unspiritual to hold people accountable. It's not unspiritual to not accept someone's behavior. Right? It's not unspiritual to say to someone, no, you transgressed, and I do not stand for this, or you have to pay for this, or whatever it is, right? But so often we're being nice locks us into accepting things that we ordinarily would not accept, or that we would see out somewhere and go, why is that happening? Are y'all following what I'm saying here? Right? And so the reason this is so important is because when we look at the world right now, we look at all of this information that's being released and all of the toxic, depraved, crazy stuff that's coming up, it's so important for us to remember that a lot of shaping our world begins with each of us, right? It begins with each of us. It begins with understanding that loving thy neighbor also means finding our own voices. Finding our own voices. Because here's the thing, if we can't name harm in our own personal lives, we can't do it collectively. It becomes harder to do it collectively and to protect other people, right? If we can't name things in our own world, if we can't speak truth to power in our own homes, in our own lives, it's hard to then do it collectively, right? If we can't call out behavior or abuse or toxicity or disrespect in our own personal relationships, we can't do it collectively, right? So then when we see these huge things coming at us, these huge evidences of abuse, of degradation, of all this stuff, we may not be doing that in our world, but if we're not able to own our own voices in our own worlds and speak up, it becomes harder to do it collectively, right? It has to begin with us. It has to begin with us. And I say this as a coach, a longtime leadership coach. I say this as a practitioner. I say this as a minister. And how many people I've worked with in my journey, and I've coached who on the outside have it, the success, the money, the this, the that. But at home, there's a whole different story happening that doesn't match what's happening out here, right? There's a whole different story of abuse or disrespect or something going on that's so deeply toxic that is not named, not healed, not held to account, and no boundaries set up. But the outside picture looks great, right? And that's what we're seeing reflect out in the world. The outside picture looks great, but then you dig down and there's the rot, right? You dig down and there's the like, whoa, right? And the macro is a blown out version of the micro. And so part of loving thy neighbor means actually finding our own voices, right? Finding our own voices to name it, to call it out, to be courageous enough to speak in our own lives. And then we create an energetic, we create a vibration, we create a consciousness that is then courageous, right? We create a consciousness that can name harm, that can stop harm. We create a consciousness that can call the law if we need to, right? Do what has to be done. Take the hard step. Say the unpopular thing. But it doesn't happen in a vacuum. It doesn't happen in a vacuum. We have to practice these things. One of my bodies of work is a woman's voice, and it's a long-term body of work that I've had for over 20 years. And most recently, the iteration that was a summit, online summit, where I interviewed different women from Marianne Williamson to corporate leaders to entrepreneurs around how they found their voice. Right? Meaning, how did you find your power? How did you find that inherent power to navigate through difficulty, right? To call people out if you need to, right? To create the life or the career that you want. And so one of the things that we explored in that summit and that I've explored in that body of work is how, and this applies to everyone, I'm speaking about women, but it applies to all of us. How we're socialized to be nice, which is performative, right? I got to act a certain way, exactly. I got to act a certain way. I have to do certain things so I get approval from external, right? I'm the nice girl, I'm the good girl, I'm the whatever. But what that toxicity does is it then says, I can't speak up when it's time to speak up. I can't speak up for myself. I can't protect my children, right? It ripples out into a whole bunch of other things when that voice gets silenced. And I think it happens to all of us. In this work, I was talking specifically with women because there is a societal conditioning that happens around how women should show up, right? But I think it applies to everyone. Everyone's encouraged. Men are also encouraged, keep quiet, conform, right? Just keep going, right? I see something happen. Nope, just keep going. Don't speak up. Right? Get bopped on the head. Don't speak up. Don't stand up. Don't stand out. I think that's just a conditioning that we all have, right? And so love thy neighbor means that we begin to let go of that stuff. We let go of that stuff because if it is true, if we truly believe the premise that God is all powerful, that God is expressing through and as each of us, then it becomes our duty to speak out for another. It becomes our duty to speak up for ourselves. It becomes our duty to say to someone, you cannot treat me that way. Right? To say no. Yeah? Are y'all following what I'm saying here? Yes? And so the point I'm making is, as I always do, is the world that is happening out there is a reflection of our collective consciousness. We may not be doing the exact things we're seeing, but we are creating a consciousness and an energetic collectively. We're participating in it so that those horrible things can exist. And this is not about blame. It's about, so what we know from New Thought is that we can change that external picture. But it starts with each of us, right? It starts with each of us. The world needs people who can speak up. The world needs people who can say the hard thing. The world needs people who can be compassionate, who can be empathetic, who respect others. But loving thy neighbor means all of it, not just I'm going to bring you some soup. I'm going to donate to this cause. Right? That's a piece of it. But it's incomplete if we're not also in our world setting up good boundaries, if we're not in our worlds calling out harm when we see it, naming it, saying no. Right? These are all companioned. And frequently what we do is we go through and it's like, love means this. Loving my neighbor means I'm going to do all this stuff, but I'm not doing anything. I'm not doing anything with my own stuff, right? And we become a cell in the body collective that is supporting toxic behavior. So here's my invitation to you, beloveds. Do you feel like I'm fussing today? No? Okay. Huh? Okay, thank you. So here is my invitation to you. For each of you, there is something in your world, not someone else's. Am I calling some people out? I see some funny faces here. There's something in your world that you need to have a better boundary around. It might be a relationship, an interaction, right? And so my invitation to you this week is to erect that boundary. Set a boundary. It's best for you. It is best for the other person or whatever it is, right? Set a boundary. You know what boundary I'm setting? Oh, you all are so funny. So one of the things that having COVID did over the last few weeks is it helped me get very clear because I had to be still more, right? So it helped clarity emerge for me. And so one of the things I became very, very clear about for myself, and I'll talk more about this in the annual meeting, is I no longer want to be doing the day-to-day operations of this community, right? Because it's one, it's too much. It's just, I can do it, but it's too much. Two, I think, my zone of genius is really speaking, coaching, teaching. And the more I can do that, that's the best thing for our community, right? I am literally up sometimes till 2 and 3 in the morning. It may not seem like it because we're small, but there's a lot of stuff that has to happen for this to run, right? There's a lot of administrative details. There's things with home office. There's like all these things, and then I teach classes. So there's a lot of things that constantly have to happen. And I just decided, you know what? In the next 3 weeks, I'm turning this all over to somebody else so that I can just be focused on my walk with God with y'all, right? So for me, thank you. I wasn't expecting that. Thank you. You like this idea? Yeah. Okay, me too. And so for me, that's a boundary because what happens is I end up working hours, and as many of you have received emails from me at like 4 in the morning, 2 in the morning, I end up just working all the time, and it's like, that's not a good boundary, right? And it's not good for our community, right? There are other ways I'm needed, and it's not that. So anyway, that's one of my boundaries is turning that over to someone else, And so my invitation to you is look at your life And it may be a relationship, it may be work, it may be something else. And where do you need to set a boundary? Do it this week. The fire horse energy is strong, y'all. Do it this week, or else it will be done for you. And I'm telling you, you want to get in front of these things. Yes? Okay, here's your other assignment this week. Oh, so if let's say boundary is not your jam for this week, but maybe it's that you have to hold someone accountable or hold yourself accountable. Right? There's something going on in your world or something going on with someone that you need to hold them accountable, or yourself. Do it. If there's harm involved, name it. If there's something going on that needs to stop, stop it. Right? But this is part of loving thy neighbor as thyself. Right? Right? Because just love without boundaries is just enabling toxic behavior. Right? Love without accountability is just chaos. People do whatever they want. We're seeing it in the world. Right? Where there's no accountability, people go crazy. Literally out of their minds. And we're seeing it now rise up in us to be accountable of this craziness that is going on because certain people are never held accountable. Right? So in your world, there's some place and space that you need to practice accountability. That is your assignment for the week. Okay? And let's see how things begin to shift with just and accountability. What happens begins to shift in your world. And we put these things into practice, and it takes courage. That's the thing about love. It takes courage to truly love. It takes courage to truly, truly experience and create extraordinary love. Yeah, we have those moments where it's just sweet and it's beautiful and it's harmonious. And we have those moments, and there are elements of it where it requires courage because it's difficult and we feel vulnerable. If I put up this boundary, will they love me? If I hold this person accountable, what happens next? Yeah. What the world needs right now is courage. What the world needs right now is courage. It needs us to be courageous lovers and to be courageously loving ourselves and loving God and loving our neighbors. That's our call. Are we up for it? Yeah. Okay, let's turn within.